They don't have it.
Yeah, you guys look it up.
Okay, because I can hardly see. It's really lively discussion. Really lively discussion.
We had the priest.
To keep us in line.
The next time we break out, it'll be men and women. We'll talk about the cardinal virtues. Yeah. So, hopefully that won't be so theological and get down there. Oh my God, we got work to do. Okay, so we're talking about the virtues. I remember I was at Mass once, and this man came up excited to introduce me to his wife. This is Bear Woznick. He's the guy that follows passions. And I go, no, I don't. He goes, yeah, you're that guy. You do all that stuff. You follow your passions. I go, no, I don't. And he kept insisting that I did. And I said, well, I hope I do. I hope I pursue virtue. You know, not to be driven by passion, but pursue virtue. And to me, especially for men, virtue is the way we get traction in our lives. It's practical, and it's a way that we can really bring focus to our lives. So I'm gonna, I'm gonna kind of follow some of my notes. There's just so much good stuff. I hate to miss out on any. So he would subtract from them what they had added to Plato, and then he would add to them what they had taken out of Plato. He kind of came back to Plato, but Augustine in those days loved Plato. And then Aquinas, thankfully, when the Muslims captured the brilliant Jewish scholars, they were asked to translate a lot of or write down and inscribe a lot of the great books. And one of the things the Jewish scholars of North Africa did was they wrote Aristotle. They saved Aristotle for us via North Africa up through Spain to St. Thomas Aquinas. And he called Aristotle the philosopher. He never calls him by name. And so God gave us faith and reason, revelation and the ability to think. And so we see, though, in these early thinkers, Aristotle, Socrates. Thank God for Dr. Peter Craig, because I can kind of understand a little bit of that just by his teachings. But Socrates proposed the four cardinal virtues. I was interviewed by Marcus Aubrey. He's one of the founders, along with Joe Rogan, of the great Onnit sports supplement company. I was sponsored by them, still am to some degree, for many years. And I was interviewed on a show, and he wanted to talk about the virtues. And I go, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the 7 virtues. And he goes, no, there's only 4. I go, no, there's 3. He goes, what? Yeah, there's the 4 cardinal virtues, but there's the 3 theological virtues that we as Catholics. So, what are the 4 cardinal virtues? By the way, cardinal can mean like the 4 points of a compass. It's one of the things it's used to refer to. It also means like the gates. They hinge on a gate. It's like the thing that opens and closes for us. But let me ask you this, Ted, which way is north right now? Well, everybody here, when I count to 3, point to where you think north is. Wait, let everybody close your eyes. Leo, close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes. Everyone's eyes closed. At the count of 3, now when I tell you open your eyes, don't move your hand. Everyone close your eyes now. Count of 3, I want you to point to true north. 1, 2, 3. Open your eyes. Don't move. Open your eyes. Look, everybody's pointing in different directions. She's pointing up. She's pointing up.
I was thinking.
That's good.
Yeah, that's my wife's wife.
Yeah, I'm trying to point, like I'm trying to fit my finger that way.
Today, is it not?
It's that way.
It's that way.
I know.
I
It's
got
going
it.
That way.
There we go.
The boat's going.
That,
the
no,
boat's
the
This is
boat's
what our
going south.
society
We're going
is,
that
this
direction.
life today. That your God,
The boat's going that direction.
The boat's
So
going
north.
this way.
I love to hear this statement because,
The boat's
well, that
going
is
that
your
way.
truth. Tell us what your truth is. Well, we know that truth is actually a person, right? Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So we want to establish true north. When I paddled my surfboard from the island of Molokai to the island of Oahu, that's 35 miles under one of the most treacherous channels in the world. I had a compass, and I knew if I wanted to go to Cocoa Head Crater here, I needed to go that way because the currents were so strong. But I had a compass, and I taped it to the front of my surfboard, and I paddled. If I hadn't had that compass, and I'd missed the island, where would I have stopped next? I probably would have missed Tahiti, 2,500 miles away, yeah, maybe hit Australia or Thailand.
Just for the record, north is there.
So you say.
So the compass says.
So show us where north is.
It's a
Where
compass.
is it?
Where's my
So-
compass?
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, get the record straight.
I gotta
So
do
we
the
want to
opposite.
know, but Socrates talked about the sunum bonum, what we might call happiness or fulfillment or beatitude. And he said everyone can be happy. And the key to it is to pursue virtue. It's simple. Just pursue virtue and you will be happy. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is not all that it's cracked up to be, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of virtue will bring you to a place called happiness. But he said it's so simple, just pursue the virtues. All people need to be is educated in the virtues, and because they know it's going to give them happiness, that's what they will pursue. But we don't, because we have a fallen nature. But Socrates made the statement, his last words that Plato wrote down was, I forget exactly the word, but an evil can do no harm to a good man, because the goodness is inside of him. Right? You can't change, you can't do any harm to someone's actual soul. You may hurt their body, and of course then he drank the poison hemlock. So the 4 cardinal virtues are, instead of temperance, I use the word self-mastery, because temperance has kind of a bad name these days. I think it means you don't drink wine like that. Women's Temperance Union or whatever that was. So temperance, prudence, and I use instead of temperance, self-mastery, prudence, fortitude, and justice. And the 3 theological, the 3 religious virtues, the 3 Godward virtues, faith, hope, and love. But Paul, we talked about the power of God. I forget what was the verse today when we were saying in Mass? The Lord our God comes with power. So what was Paul's favorite word in his writings? What do you think would be his favorite word? Jesus? Love. Maybe it was love. It was power. Dynamite. So don't even think about pursuing the virtues unless you're going to pursue them with God. And that's why I just say this flat out. If you're a Christian and you don't spend an hour in prayer and meditating on God's word, like not Mark Cobb, he lives in prayer all day long. He's either praising the Lord or praying for others, or he's reading scripture. But if you don't spend an hour every day with the Lord in prayer, you're nothing but a poser. And you're a dangerous person, because you're a bad advertisement for the Lord. Because you're not showing the joy of the Lord. You know, I have a friend, Eileen, you guys met her. There's a certain person that we know who goes around saying he's a Christian, and she said, please don't say you're a Christian. Please don't do that. Don't do that. You know, be a Christian if you want. Don't say you are, because you're not. You're bad advertisement for God. Jesus said, I wish you were hot or cold, but if you're lukewarm, I'll vomit you. In fact, it's explosive vomiting you out of my mouth. Lukewarm water in those days was not really considered that healthy, right? Because they didn't, the ability to keep things pure. And when they baptized in those days, if you read the Didache, they baptized in living water, which meant running streams. They loved running water. If you be lukewarm, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. That's what a lukewarm Christian is. So in order for us to thrive and experience happiness in our life, we need to pursue virtue, but we cannot do that without spending time in the Lord. And we have all these beautiful ways: daily Mass, adoration, liturgy of the hours, meditating on the scriptures, the Jesus prayer, and so many other ways in our faith. So Mark Kilgore, you built, where's Mark? You built a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Did you just get a bunch of parts and start putting together, or was there sort of a manual or anything?
Yeah, there's a manual for it.
There's a manual. Now, if you just started building it together, you might have been able to do it.
Yeah, I'm pretty well mechanically inclined.
But
It might have been there probably been a
Someone
few
like
parts.
me wouldn't know how to do it. Yeah, I remember I used to take apart clocks when I was a kid and put them back together. There'd always be pieces missing. We don't really want to pursue any sort of thing that has to do with power or any area of our life without knowing the owner's manual, right? And so that's what we're doing here. When you have the Catholic Catechism and the scriptures side by side, they need to go hand in hand. The written word and tradition with a capital T, as Paul said, that which I've hold fast to the traditions that I've taught you, that what I've written to you, that which I'm speaking to you. So from the oral tradition and the scriptures that the Catholic Church gave to the world, why not go to the church that established the table of contents to help interpret and understand scriptures? We need both. We need our consciences to be formed. If you have love only, then you will say to the woman who's in the worst case pregnant, maybe via rape. You may say to her, oh, this is so empathetically, so compassionately, you should just abort this child. It'll be better for you in your life if you do. But that's just empathy. That's just kind of warm, gushy love without truth. We know the truth is that it'll damage her in so many ways, or break her heart and wound her for her life. Plus, you're murdering an innocent child. She was maybe an innocent child almost herself. She may only be 15 or 16, but two wrongs don't make right. So, but what if all we have is truth? This is the way you do it. This is the way it's. This is truth. But you don't have love. Then that's out of whack. You need love and truth, as Pope John Paul II said, the two wings to be able to fly properly. So that's what we hope to pursue when we talk about the theological virtues and the cardinal virtues and putting them together. So I'm going to read to you a little bit from the Catechism. Well, first I'm going to read to you from Gregory of Nyssa, Saint Gregory of Nyssa. The goal of the virtuous person is to become like God. That's from the Catholic Catechism. The goal of the virtuous person is to become like God. If you see one of my sons, I don't think at this point my sons look very much like they're in my image. Maybe Jeremiah's a little bit now, looks like he's in my image. When he gains a little weight, a little bit chubby in the cheeks. He's in my image, but he's not like me. He's very, very unique, different personality completely. We are in God's image, but we're not very much like him. That's what becoming virtuous is about, to grow and to become more like him. And remember, what was Jesus' purpose for coming to earth? Was it just to be born and to die on the cross so our sins could be forgiven? No. Catholic teaching says, Jesus came, he said, I've come to do that. I think if that's in there, I come to do thy will, O Father. But Jesus said, I came to fulfill all righteousness. So from the moment of his birth, I ask people, how many wills did Jesus have? He had a human will, and he had a God will. He's all God and all man. And so every moment of his life, he could choose whether to obey his parents, whether to obey the law, whether to obey his Father. When he was tempted, his human soul was certainly tempted by Satan. And so Jesus learned obedience through the things that he suffered. So Jesus grew in wisdom and stature in his humanness. And so that's what he's asking us to do too. So the goal of the virtuous person is to become like God. We're made in God's image. We have a spiritual, rational soul. We can commune with God, but we want to become like him. We want to be virtuous. The Catechism also says someplace that a life of virtue brings a life of ease. And I think the way I'd apply that is, Jesus said in the world you'll have tribulation. We're going to have adversity, which is really just a little bit close, very close to the word adventure, right? You can turn adversity into adventure by living a life of virtue. But the ease is that it's really simple to discern virtue. That's the way I have to go. And so it simplifies your life. It doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it, doesn't take away the adversity or the challenge, but it gives you the direction and the purpose. So virtue. And so what I'm saying is, by this thing about love and truth, our consciences, the Catholic Church teaches us, must be formed. We have this sense of conscience, but it can be so you see it so much in the virtue signalers out there, getting all up in air about something, and it's misguided, a poorly formed conscience. So the place that we start with virtue is it's a habit. It becomes automatic. When you live a life of virtue, your decisions become more automatic. Like I bet you if Theo found I dropped a $1 bill, he'd probably go, oh, here's a $1 bill you dropped. He would give it back to me. $100 bill, he'd probably keep.
It depends what mood I'm in.
A virtuous mood?
But virtue should be a habit. You continually to make that habit. And what that means is it's always a decision. Life is just a culmination of a lot of little. Your being here was because you made a decision, but I bet you're here too because of a lot of little decisions and bigger decisions in your past that brought you to a place of really wanting to go deeper with God. So the battle really begins in the mind. So the battle is begins in our thoughts. And it begins not with, should I do this or shouldn't I do that? It really starts with, am I going to ponder excellence? Am I going to, as Paul said, whatever is good, whatever is worthy, think on these things. It's so easy to think about the negative or to look. I remember what I said to the Lord once, Lord, show me secrets about people, but only show me good secrets. And I can walk down the street in Waikiki and go, oh, there's a beautiful person. Or, oh, I see that person's overcoming that limp that he has, or things like that. But to ponder the good things, look at the good things in others and in the Lord and in the world. So virtue starts with bringing all thoughts into captivity. I once led the worship in a Catholic charismatic prayer group. It was a church, by the way, that Father Robert Getz had been sent into to close in Las Cruces, New Mexico, with the Catholic charismatic renewal was standing room only at the masses. And I would lead worship, and our worship group put together a band called Captured Captivity. Jesus took, he conquered death and brought all and captured captivity. Let the Lord help you to bring your thoughts into captivity, and win with a firm disposition the battle for virtue. So I want to go into the first virtue. I'll just read one thing from the Catechism. Human virtues are firm attitudes. What's an attitude? Firm attitudes. Good morning, Rachel. Aloha. Good to have you with us. Aloha, partner. I forget his name. Where's our coffee? No, come join us.
She's trying to bring the kids back to
Yeah.
It's an hour.
Oh, okay.
You don't have a car. Bring us.
Human virtues are firm attitudes, stable dispositions, habitual perfections of intellect and will that govern our actions, order our passions, and guide our conduct according to reason and faith. Socrates and Scripture. Reason and faith. They make possible ease, self-mastery, and joy in leading a morally good life. And good is a very significant word. Only God is good. Good is a very significant word. And if you're going to be good, in a philosophical term, good means, for example, that a good boy, is a very doggy dog. He's a real doggy type dog. That would be a good dog. A good human being is someone who's living in the image and likeness of God. That would make you good. And that's your cause. That's your final end. That's what God desires for you, is to live a morally good life. The virtuous man is he who freely practices the good. So we're going to talk a little bit about this thing called prudence. One of my favorite, people look at me, why would he like to talk about prudence? Because I lack so much of it, I paid my dues. Prudence is not being prudish. Prudence is not timidity. Prudence is, I don't know who said it, but it is known as the charioteer of the virtues. A charioteer is a gnarly dude, right? He's leading everybody into battle. He's having to keep his balance. He's probably shooting arrows while he's riding. He's got how many horses leading him, and so the prudence is meant to rein and guide the other virtues. So prudence is a powerful, gnarly virtue. It's kind of where I think a good place to start with virtue is with prudence. And what is prudence? It's to discern the true good in every situation and to pursue it. One of the definitions of love is to will the true good in the other. As John Paul II said, self-donation then to fulfill that. So prudence is very, very powerful. Think about this. I'm a private pilot. When I've gone skydiving, Cindy's a licensed skydiver. Go skydiving, you don't just go blow down a chute and jump out of a plane. There's a checklist you go through, right? When you go before you fly a plane, there's this checklist. You go outside the plane, you check the wall, you check the hinges, you go inside, you check all your instruments, and it's just go, go, go. When we're on the Space Coast, probably the most bold thing American humans have ever done is fly to the moon, But those people weren't foolish. They were very bold, very prudent. When we listen to the launches by our house, we can sit on our deck and watch the launches. We can tune in live, and the person will go, Downwind, go. I don't know. Let me see. Fuel, go. Electrical systems, go. Permission to launch, sir. Permission granted. And then it starts, I think, from the 2-minute down count, and they launch. So it's a very prudent thing. And you know, before we launch, before we do this courageous thing, this bold thing, people think prudence and fortitude don't go well together. You can't have fortitude if you don't have prudence. My son Jeremiah has surfed in the biggest waves ever ridden on the North Shore of Oahu in 2007. 85-foot waves is what they called it visually, from the back of the wave, so bigger in the front, and the Coast Guard called it 100 foot that day. Jeremiah was the only one to ride that day. After he rode, 2 other people rode. The great pro surfers were coming in when my friend Crazy Todd and Jeremiah were going out. The waves are so big you can't paddle into them. You have to be towed in by a jet ski. And I just remember Josh was saying, "Dad, Jeremiah's going out." I jump in my Hummer, I jam up to the North Shore. "Where is he?" Because I don't know. Lost him the minute they went out. The buoy at the Haleiwa Harbor was underwater. You know, the safety buoy, couldn't see it. But Jeremiah and I Jeremiah's trained his whole life for big waves. That summer, we would go down into Waikiki, dive down in 20 feet of water, grab a boulder, run underwater, build up our cardio while holding our breath. Father knows that in the evenings, the ancient tradition of holding your breath for the 2 minute and 20 seconds it takes for the sun to set and praying as that sunset goes. So Jeremiah has trained a lot. So he trained. But there came that moment when he was like, do or die, are you going to do this or not? And Crazy Todd took him to a place called Outside Alligators, and he towed into these 10 incredibly monstrous waves. But before he did, was he prudent? Right? He had trained for that. He'd surfed 20-foot waves with me, and then bigger and bigger waves, and then now this is his moment that he's waiting for his whole life. And most big wave riders, by the way, are in their late 30s or early 40s. It takes that much to develop the wisdom and the prudence to be able to do it. Right, Mark? So he dropped in. So he did a very bold thing, but he did it with prudence. So prudence is not timidity, but it is abandoning ourselves to God's will. And if you're a Christian, you're supposed to be, you're not going to get away with not being bold. Mark Kilgore knows that. He was at adoration and he said, "Okay, Lord, whatever you want from me." And then the next thing you know, within 2 minutes, he has to give his testimony. No, now I have to step it out. So if you're a Christian, you're gonna be called to be bold. Theo, it's the greatest, you already know this, it's the greatest adventure of life. Because, I mean, so many people in life, they're sitting on the beach and go, "Look at that surfer riding a big wave. That's amazing," but you can't ride the wave if you don't paddle out. And you can't experience the wild adventure of God's will unless you're in God's will. Sitting on the beach won't do it. You have to turn your back on the Aina, on the land, and paddle out. And then you wait on the Lord in prayer and discerning. And before we paddle out of big waves, okay, there's 2 swells coming. There's a ground swell coming from the north, and there's another new ground swell filling in a little bit more from the northeast. The timing of the sets on the north swell is every 20 minutes, 7 or 8 waves of 40 feet come through. This one, smaller waves are coming through more often. When they come together at the same time, 2 waves match up, it'll be bigger. We know the tide is dropping. We know where the reef is. We know where the rip tide is, which can take us out like a chairlift, but also can cause us not to get back in if we don't get into the impact zone. So we're being wise. We're being prudent. We're seeing what is there, but we're being bold. If you want to experience life, you can't be on the Aina. You got to turn your back. The first lesson of spirituality: detach. Step out of the boat. Abandoning yourself to God's will require a prudent boldness. It means you go against the norm. If you're going to stay inside your comfort zone, you don't need prudence at all. People think prudence is sitting around watching football on Sunday afternoons. You just need a footrest instead of prudence. God is like a wild man, right? They call it the wilderness. When you go out in the nature, they call it the wilderness. And I was telling Cindy earlier, when I was 19 years old, the Lord gave me I would say it was I wouldn't say it was a vision, but we're praying, what is your will, Lord? And I had this image of me being out in the wilderness and teaching. And so that's what I'm doing now. We're out in the wild. Our ministry is we're out in the wild. God is wild. Don't mess with him. He's dangerous, by the way. And every man should be a little bit dangerous too. who God's called to experience Him, you know. So, can I get to the end here pretty soon? Saint Bernard of Clairvaux said that prudence is the mother of strength. Proverbs 2 says, discretion will watch over you, understanding will guard you. The Catechism says, it is prudence that immediately guides the judgment of conscience. The prudent man determines and directs his conduct in accordance with his judgment. With the help of this virtue, we apply moral principles to particular cases without error and overcome doubts about the good to achieve and the evil to avoid. And Pope Emeritus Benedict, I don't know how I'm saying that right, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI said, prudence, this is really powerful, prudence will make you patient with yourself and with others, courageous and firm in decisions, merciful and just, concerned solely, prudence is concerned solely with your salvation and the salvation of others. I think one of the greatest joys in life is to bring another human life into existence as a parent, knowing they're going to live forever. But one of the greatest joys too, I know Father knows this very well, is to bring someone else with you to heaven. Yeah. Have your spiritual children. Salvation for yourself and those of others. So, the prudence isn't being clever, it's not being conniving. Don't mistake it for being calculating. Prudence, on the contrary, usually just brings simple clarity in what you do. So why don't we break out into discussion groups? Let's have the men go to the back, and we'll have the women, I guess, come over here. And there's some. Fran, do you want to lead the women? Can you lead? Just kind of keep the discussion going.
Okay.
And we'll say, Ted, do you want to lead our discussion in the back with the men?
You want me to turn this off?
Good. And then after this, we'll take a break.